Great. Okay, and let me go back to this. Good. Okay, so we should be still sharing. Um, can I do this? Okay, good. Okay. Oh, I don't know. Okay, can anyone let me know if the screen looks weird? Hopefully it doesn't look weird to you. Um, great. What I'm gonna do now then is come here. Oops. Hmm. Is that the one? No. Oh no. Sorry. Give me 1 second. Immersive? No, I don't think immersive is the right one. Mouse. Okay, whatever. I'm moving on. Yes, here we go. The founders talk. Well done. So yeah, welcome everyone. As I mentioned, we're recording. As I mentioned, this is a project that Emmanuel and I have been wanting to do for a long time. And
Rice gummy too.
uh,
Hey, we did some money.
hello. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Perfect. I think we can see it now. Okay, yeah. So just one more reminder, please. If everyone can
All
mute
right.
yourselves, that would be
We do
awesome.
present today.
This one is 12,000. Samsung is 10,000 something.
Sorry, I
Only
cannot figure
you
out who's
can
not
spend
muted.
2,000 if you are not looking at the brand. And that 2,000 goes to
Here we
you.
go. Oh, Sandra. Okay. Once again, big please to mute yourself if you can. Right, now I'm going to be starting. And then the other thing is I've got my notes on my phone. So if you see me looking at my phone, it's not because I'm distracted, but I'm just trying to keep us on time. Okay, so there's a lot to say. Just in terms of an overview, the way that I structured this session is that I'll do about 10 minutes of a basic interview to our story. And I know that some people who are joining are already founders, are already running businesses. And so there might be some things that sound very redundant to you. But it was really important to me to make sure that I really provide some basic details because I think when you're starting a business, it's easy to be completely lost and not even know the most basic places to get started. So there'll be a lot of basic information, but I'm hoping that there's still enough specialized or like singular information that is interesting to you. And sometimes it's just interesting to compare notes anyway. So I'll tell you our basic story. I want to tell you a little bit about how we started in terms of like registration. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how we built up the business. So, what we did in the local market, what we did in terms of our internal building up of our team and our structures. Then I'll talk a little bit about looking for money, which I think people are always interested in. So, grants, loans, business programs that we did and that I would recommend. Then I'll talk a little bit about, okay, once we have some money, what do we do with it? And so talking about building our factory, talking about building our capacity to sell larger volumes. And then also I'll sort of finish off with leadership lessons and just looking at, what does it mean actually to be a leader and also how does being a leader change over time. Yeah, and some sort of lessons for being a leader now. Okay, let me do this way. Great. Okay, I think we're ready. So here we are. So first of all, this is myself and Emmanuel. We co-founded the business in 2018. I'm obviously the one on the left, and Emmanuel is the one on the right. And I start with this picture because obviously, we are the co-founders of the business. We are the people who at the origin of the business. But I show this not just because we're the people in charge and the people at the top, but because partnership has been so fundamental to our journey. Partnership has been so important. In fact, I would say so crucial to the us being able to grow at all. And there was a question actually already about finding a business partner, and I can talk about that later. But yeah, I always want to really, really emphasize that so much of the business journey, at least as I have experienced it, is made easier or even made possible either by direct partnership through co-founding or at least through teamwork and having a really supportive network and community. And one other thing to mention before I sort of go into more later is that a partnership or at least community, but I'll say partnership for now, really allows you to address the different needs that your company has in the environment that it's in. So I'm someone who's Ghanaian by heritage, but I've grown up overseas, and that's really great and important in some ways. I'm able to sort of like speak the language of the foreigner or of our export buyers, for example. I also have the experience of like different educational systems, but I don't have the sort of cultural and linguistic fluency that Emmanuel has on the ground. So Emmanuel is really great at working with people, managing people. He's really great at making connections on the ground in Ghana. And this is something that I'm just not as good at. And so it's been really great to have him as a partner. And that way we're able to together do a lot of the work that is necessary to make the business go forward. Also, it's just really, really a lot of work and really hard to run a business by yourself. And I know because actually I started a business by myself, and Emmanuel, okay, he didn't start a business by himself, but he was running a business with some other people before. And actually, I decided to start a dried fruit company, and I was making dried mango and dried banana literally in the house, in various aunties' kitchens. And Emmanuel was working with a different group of people, and they decided, unsurprisingly, that they were going to pursue more conventional jobs, which I think is the more sane activity to do. I think it's much more insane to pursue running your own business, but there you go, here we are. And so at one point, we were both running dried fruit businesses separately and alone, and it is impossible. We were fortunate enough to be connected by a mutual friend and advisor. And I think, literally from the first meeting, I was ready to have Emmanuel as a partner. And, I maybe wouldn't advise that. I would maybe not advise going into business partnership after meeting somebody once. But I've been really, really lucky that Emmanuel is someone with a lot of integrity, a lot of discipline, and a lot of commitment. So that's a bit about our story. Yeah, maybe I'll touch on later about suggestions for finding a co-founder and business partner. But my main point is that if you want to succeed, if you want to be able to do this work and maintain some small amount of sanity, it is much better if you can find a business partner. Okay, one other thing on that. Okay, this is going to be such a terrible presentation because I always get distracted. But one other important thing is that speaking specifically to our environment in Ghana, I think that there's often we encounter this idea that of it's better to be a bit secretive, better to be a bit protective. And I think that feeling comes from real experiences that people had where they were disappointed by other people. And I really appreciate that. But at the same time, I think that if we don't take the risk, if we don't have a little bit of faith in each other, if we don't take the risk of connecting with each other, we're really doing ourselves a disservice. And so, it's something that Emmanuel and I have tried to do, and we continue to try to do, is make sure that we are modeling trust, communication, integrity, and a desire for connection and mutual support. Okay, so that's me and Emmanuel, blah, blah, blah. This is our team. Well, this is kind of our team. Our team has expanded, our team has shifted slightly, but it gives you an idea who we are. Basically, overall, I haven't even told you what business we do, but I mean, by now you probably know what business we do. But essentially, we are a woman-led, um, I like to say dynamic group of young Ghanaians, a women-led company of young Ghanaians who are transforming fresh fruit, primarily from Ghana, into exotic dried fruit products that we sell both locally in Ghana and abroad. And basically, our mission is to harness the power of agribusiness to build robust financial livelihoods for people. So, in the most simple language, we think that dried fruit manufacturing or any kind of agribusiness can produce enough money, can produce enough income that people are able to live their lives in whatever way they want to. So, if somebody wants to I don't know, build a house, or if somebody wants to further their education, if somebody wants to travel, we want to use agribusiness to make it possible for them to have the income that they can do that. Yeah. And we do that through our agribusiness. Basically, here we make tropical dried fruit. Um, yeah, that's basically that. Okay, now origin story. Gosh, I was looking through photos to put together this presentation, and I was just looking at this photo on the right, and I just was thinking about how baby-faced we all are, and how energetic we were at that time, and how tired and stressed I am now. But it's all for the best. But yes, the reason I wanted to show these pictures is because oftentimes all of us are very can get very caught up in looking at the final product, whether it's the final product that's literally on the shelf or the final product, which is like the glossy company and all the media and the marketing. But most often, they are usually very humble beginnings, and our beginnings were very humble as well. And I think it's important to stress that because it can be very intimidating looking at a big company and trying to imagine yourself there. And I think for anyone who is interested in building a business or starting an idea, it's very hard if you are immediately trying to get to that glossy finish. I think it's much more important to allow yourself the time to develop over time. So at the beginning, it's going to look honestly kind of embarrassing. It's going to look very basic. It's not going to look cute. But you want to be able to start from somewhere. That is literally the most important step. The other thing that I wanted to share with these photos is to say, I mean, you'll see the difference between then and now, but the main thing about what we were doing at the beginning was just making a start. But it's super important with any business or any product to make a start and slowly build the product, to build your experience, and to build something that people can believe in. And you can also kind of tell, I hope, from this picture that we started literally in someone's house. And actually, I wanted to circle back to that point I was making earlier about community connection and partnership, because that has been so fundamental to our journey. When Emmanuel and I first started working together, we had no factory, we had no money, and we had not even really that much of a plan. I did have to write various business plans, but we didn't have much. But what we had was good friends and good support. And very early on in our journey, that advisor that connected both of us, Kwame Williams from Moringa Connect and now True Foundry, he actually invited us to rent a space in his factory and use that to be able to start processing. And, much love to Kwame and Moringa Connect, but that factory that they were using was not that fancy either. It was actually a renovated room, a renovated garage in his parents' house. And that's where we started operating as well. So really starting not from very far. And you can see in the top left corner, that's my car or my mom's car. And I used to go to the farms myself to go and collect the fruit and bring it back. And yeah, we just like trying to make it work. We're all super young, which has pros and cons, which I'll address later. But yeah, we were just literally making a start with whatever we had. And part of making that start was also making sure as soon as possible to actually register the business. And this is kind of like the basic stuff that I wanted, especially to highlight for people who don't have a business yet, because I think that it's quite easy to get caught up in this idea that you have to make this cool product, that you have to get to market, that you have to just start running. But actually, some of the most important things that you can do is very, very early become a legal entity very, very early, become to register yourself, to become something that like exists beyond your mind and beyond your idea. And yeah, just to say it again, becomes a legal entity because that is the foundation of any later business. Whether you want to sell a product later, whether you want to export, whether you want to get a grant, whether you want to get grant financing, whether you want to get a loan, none of that is possible until you have formally registered your business. So originally, I had registered our business as a sole proprietorship. And then when I met Emmanuel and started working with Emmanuel, we transitioned to a limited liability company registered in Ghana. And on the far right, you can see our food registration certificate as well. And just a note for any of us operating in Ghana or thinking about operating in Ghana, it is extremely important, as much as possible, to try and get the details right the first time. I mean, we registered this business now, okay, it's 2018, like 6 years ago, so the system's probably changed and updated, but it's really, really hard, almost impossible to change any details once you've done that original registration. So please try and make sure those original details are very clear. So the name of your company, who owns how many shares, where you operate, all of that stuff, try and get it correct the first time. And like I said, try and do your registrations as soon as possible, whether both for registering the legal entity of the business and also for registering the food product as well. All right, so once we had done that, hold on, let me just check my notes, make sure I said everything correctly in that one time. Yeah, okay, good. Um, so what was I saying? Yeah. So at this point in our journey, it's 2018, Emmanuel and I have started working together. We basically don't have money. We don't have our own place, but we've been able to leverage the connections that we have, that we made through sincere friendship and some certain programs. And we've started operating in Bawe in Greater Accra, and we're working on making a minimal viable product. Now, again, I always want to really emphasize the journey. You don't automatically go from having an idea to suddenly being on the shelf to suddenly exporting. There's so many lessons that you need to learn along the way. And some of those lessons are formal lessons, and some of those lessons are gained through experience. So the formal lessons are coming through incubator programs or business accelerators. So you might be able to see in the background of this picture on the left that Emmanuel and I, as and our business, registered with the Ghana Climate Innovation Center. I think that's one of maybe like 4 or 5 incubator and accelerator programs that we did. And incubator and accelerator programs are super helpful. Once you've done one, it feels like you've done 6. It feels like you've done them all. And after a while, I won't lie, it does become tedious to keep doing them. But definitely at the beginning of your journey, I think it's super important to join one of these programs. One, they often give you templates for important documents. They teach you how to manage data, how to manage information. They help you begin creating a network, whether it's a network of peers or a network between potential investors or people providing funding or anything like that. Um, and also, it's just kind of like a safe space to share ideas and to get feedback. They also often have experts and consultants who can give you feedback on any business plan you might be writing. And often, well, I was going to say, of course, and often they have funding that you can access either directly by being through the program or once you've graduated the program, they have funders who will consider you. The other thing I would say about these accelerator and incubator programs is that they help you build credibility and they help you build just a presence, right? For us, it made a lot of difference to be able to go to people, whether it's retailers, whether it's other investors, and say, oh, we were in this World Bank funded program with the Ghana Climate Innovation Center. So, even if something doesn't necessarily look important on the surface, or if you can't necessarily immediately get money out of the program, it might still be worth it in terms of, again, building up your story. And this idea of building up your story is so important. And I think it's important not just as this like shallow marketing tool, but when you sort of step back from being in your own business and you step back and you're kind of looking at your business from the point of view of a customer who doesn't know you or the point of view of anyone, you realize that until somebody knows your story, they don't know you, they don't know your product, and maybe they don't care. And so you've got to be able to build up a story that you can share with them so that people then care, that they want to see you succeed, that they want to support you, that they believe you're trustworthy. And actually, just a quick note on the trustworthiness. The reality of being a business operating out of Africa, West Africa, Ghana, is that has there is sometimes a very negative bias, a negative association, this idea that Ghanaian businesses or West African businesses or African businesses may not be that reliable. There's a lot of 419 history, and so people don't know, like, should we believe in them? Especially people who are thinking about investing or thinking about purchasing from overseas. They have very little to go on to know you. And so the more that you can build up your profile, the more that you can associate yourself with established organizations, banks, whatever, the more that people are ready to believe in you. And that establishing yourself comes both from being in programs and associating yourself with organizations, but also building up your online presence as well. My friends make fun of me because I'm really obsessed with LinkedIn. But honestly, whether you're in business, whether you're like in manufacturing or you're in the arts, like everyone should be on LinkedIn and updating their profiles. Because again, it's like if people don't know you, they need places to go and find out more about you and like find reasons to believe that you're real. So be updating your LinkedIn. And in general, be building up your online presence, whether it's through your social media channels, your own website, etc. So I've talked about organizations, associating with organizations, being in programs, building your online presence. And then, of course, there's like building your presence in person and like being there at the forefront of the company. So on the right here, there's an image of me, that's me at the market, and I used to spend so many hours, days, weeks, years of my life attending markets. And it's a lot of work, it's hard, it's a lot of energy work as well, but it's such invaluable experience when it comes to being face to face with your customer and learning what they do like, what they don't like. Also, of course, it's an opportunity to make money and to make quick money as well because you're getting the cash there and then. And actually, funnily enough, this lady on the right in the picture with me is both a friend and then she went on to invest in the business. So, you're really making a lot of connections by being present. And again, building up your story, building up the relationship with people so that when they see other products on the shelf, they have a reason to support you and to be with you. Okay, I'm so conscious that there's so much that I feel like I'm not saying, but we're just gonna try and get through what we can. Okay, so in our journey, we did a lot of the incubator programs. We were fortunate enough to be able to access space through another company, through partnership. Um, and we were starting to put together our product. What else were we doing? We were going to the markets, we were building up a reputation, a good reputation. So we've started building our journey. Then we finally started to be able to grow again. So from that first site that you saw in the earlier picture, we were able to move to a second site. I'll talk a bit more about how we did that and where we got the money from. But just in terms of this, like we're building, yeah, we moved to the second location and we then learned a lot of lessons and built our business in two main ways. One was from actually processing and being in the factory and working with people, learning how to hire people, learning how to cut fruit, learning how to put it into the dryer, learning where we need to source fruit from, all the learnings that come around the physical product. That's what we were doing in this time, which will be so important later when you want to then access bigger markets, bigger sales. You really need to know the fundamentals of the business, and this is where we learned the fundamentals of the business. And then the second part of what we did and continue to do as part of our building learning journey is the data and information side. And I cannot stress this enough. Yes, it's so important to have a product, but that product and your efforts are going nowhere if you are not organized about your information and what you're doing. So one of the greatest gifts we had at the beginning of our journey was one, being in these formal incubator programs that taught us how to handle data and admin and sort of how to build internal processes. But also, I never forget Kwame Williams from Moringa Connect and True Foundry basically sitting me down and saying, you need to track everything. And also, you need to always create a document, create a table, blah, blah, blah. When you're a small company, you don't have money to go and get any fancy software. You probably don't even know the names of fancy software. I didn't know the names of fancy software. I still don't know the names of fancy software. I've heard of Slack. I still don't know how to use Slack. We don't use Slack. Actually, most of our business to this day, since 2018 to this day, is on Google Spreadsheets and Google Documents and the Google Drive. It's not like Google Drive is super easy to use. Anyone can just go on it, but it is much more accessible than, high-tech programs that cost money and that require a lot of learning and onboarding. So, number one piece, well, okay, not number one. Top three pieces of advice: track your data. And this is everything from, what sales did I make? How much money did I come in? Um, how much is it costing us to produce things? These are things that you're going to hear all the time, but for us was super, super important. And it's important not only for you to know in terms of figuring out like, okay, are we actually being able to afford to do what we're doing and how much is it costing us? But also, it's super important that you build up this database of information for people who are looking at you. So when I talk about people who are looking at you, I'm talking about clients, retail clients who want to be purchasing from you. I'm talking about banks who are considering giving you loans. I'm talking about investors or grant funds that are interested in giving you money. They are looking at whether you have formal processes in place. So you might remember that a few like minutes ago, I was talking about needing to be registered. This is part of that. So you need to be a legal entity, you need to be registered, you need to have certain certifications in place, and you both need to and also want to be able to show people that, hey, we're small, we have three people in our workforce, but actually look how organized we are. You can trust us to handle money properly. You can trust us to handle the product properly. And a lot of the times, like even though we maybe didn't have a certain fancy certification or we didn't necessarily have quite as much experience as they were looking for, we could kind of convince them that it was worth it to take a chance on us because we looked very formal and we were trying to be formal and we were trying to be organized. So, yeah. Of course, this is not necessarily the place where I can like take you through all the specific templates, documents, whatever we did, but I just really wanted to emphasize like point overall. Like it's really important to build up your data. Okay. Whew, okay. So now some of that I was talking about like the reasons to have money, etc. Um, so we we got money from all these different people. We got money from the Ghana Climate Innovation Center, Fidelity Bank, True Foundry, most recently USAID, and then also Belgium King Baldwin Business Partnership Facility. These did not all happen at the same time. I just wanted to put them all on the screen so you can see quickly, sort of like have an idea of where we got money from and how. But it's been a much more gradual journey and actually quite slow. And relating to that last slide that I just shared, none of these funding opportunities would have been possible if we didn't have that basic registration, that basic data, those basic processes in place. So it's because we had those in place that people were able to believe in us, that people were able to, yeah, allow us into their program. Okay, good. So it's just someone's muted. Ah, sorry, I'm just gonna mute this person. There we go. All right. Just a little bit of background. So the Ghana Climate Innovation Center was an incubator program where we would have to go and take classes and take lessons and participate with other people. And then we got access to the financing. Fidelity Bank and other banks, but we have a relationship with Fidelity Bank, has a program specifically for young entrepreneurs. And that's really important because in Ghana, especially, commercial loans are going for about 30% interest rate, which is ginormous. For comparison, international interest rates or interest rates in Europe, for example, are high when they are at 7%. And so at 30%, it's just almost impossible to pay back as a Ghanaian business unless you're a huge business or you have no other choice. But Fidelity Bank, for example, the program we have has an interest rate of 10%. And so that's actually somehow more doable. Um, and then over time, we were able to get money elsewhere. What I just realized I forgot to add, but was super important, was two things. One, so much of our original financing and our most important financing came from the people around us, or friends of friends, or acquaintances or connections that we made either directly or through other people. One of the hardest things in an environment like Ghana is that we have very little or no government support. There are very few government programs. And also, a lot of the times the people around us are themselves struggling with money. So, in some other country, you could just be like, okay, I'm just going to like raise money around me. But in Ghana, that's really difficult. However, it is still important first to look at the people around you, aunties, uncles, friends, family, and see, okay, can I get a couple cities there? Can I get a couple cities here? And start with that. It also doesn't always have to be in money, right? It can be in support. So I mentioned Kwame earlier. Okay, yes, he gave us a space to work in, but also what was super, super helpful was that he would review my grant applications. So sometimes we want to look to our network first to get either financial assistance if it's possible, and even the smallest amount of money can often make a difference, but also to get non-financial assistance, non-monetary assistance that is really important as well. So, what you call it? So it'll be sorry, I just got distracted. So it'll be like, yeah, like I said, like people helping you write applications or just give you advice or give you a lift somewhere as well. I have to shout out my mom who's on the line, who gave us our most important first financing and continues to give us financing. It's very important that we recognize her because she's been really helpful. But I also understand that not everyone has a mom that they can just like turn to all the time. So I really want to emphasize that it doesn't just have to be money. It doesn't just have to be from the people around you. But it does help. But it does help. Fortunately, we do also have lots of programs and grant sources. And I put together a very limited resource list that I'll share after. There's so many more resources, but I've put together the key ones that were really meaningful in our journey, at least. Yeah, sorry. The one that I forgot to add here was we did actually do a crowdfunding campaign in the end. We did a Kickstarter campaign. And from that, we raised a lot of money, actually, from people worldwide because it's online, but also from a lot of people from the US. And um, I want to say again that part of the reason we were able to raise money from people who had never met us was because we had spent all this time building up our story, having a presence online, putting our faces out there, talking to people, so that when people took a look at our campaign, they saw something to believe in and they wanted to support, and they could see that we had already made an effort. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna slide down. Oh, okay. Actually, no, no. Sorry. One other thing. The thing about financing and funding is that it is very slow. It always takes longer than you think. So, again, Kwame, who's like, I call him my work dad. I have two work dads. One is Peter Muller and one is Kwame Williams. And anytime I get in a problem, I either go to my actual real mom or I go to my work dads. And I remember sitting down with Kwame and saying to him, okay, we need to raise X amount of money. And I was like, we need it in 6 months or whatever. And he was like, oh, that's so cute. It's gonna be more like 2 years. And I was like, what? And I was like, whatever. And then I think it literally took 2 years to get money, like from when I had not even the idea of when I needed money, but when I was ready to have money, when I had a business plan, when I had an idea, we were ready. From that point, it still took 2 years before we had enough money in the bank to be able to actually make the move. So you just want to keep that in mind. Like, build up your data, be working, be selling, be making connections, plan for the future, but also know it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time. But it does eventually happen if you just keep going. All right. So anyway, blah blah blah. We finally get some money. Oh, actually, no. I think I wanted to, why did I have the slide? I think the slide is part of me saying that we are now this year starting to do more export. But before we did that, before people in a whole different country who don't know us would trust us to give us a purchase order and to give us some money, we had to first build up our experience and our history in the local market. So all those sales that we made at the at the markets, all the sales that we made, at ShopRite, at wherever, that was really important, an important part of our journey, both in teaching us how to make a product that we can sell consistently to big clients, and also in making us look more trustworthy and believable to foreign clients. I could do a whole nother session just on how to get into retailers. I'm so sorry. I have to try and squeeze in everything into at least an introduction into this. But one quick thing on getting into supermarkets, it is often a long process. Don't give up. I think it took me at least 1 year, maybe a year and a half or 2 years to get our products on the shelf in ShopRite. Um, and it takes a long time because you have to find the purchaser, the person who registers and who gives the okay for products. Then you often have to do some kind of registration, blah, blah, blah. So it can take a long time. Sometimes it's faster though. So you might be able to go to your container shop or whatever in your neighborhood and have a much quicker agreement with them. If you can do that, that's really good. But don't be disheartened if it takes time. Just keep going. It's a similar story with our airline customers. Some of you may have seen our products on like Emirates or something. Also took me probably like 2 years before that came through. So just keep persevering. But basically, you need to find the person that's called the purchaser or the buyer. Oftentimes, it's just like turning up at the shop and pestering people until they give you the name, and then making endless meetings until it happens. But again, before they will even talk to you, you need to have your business registrations, you need to have your product registered, you need to have barcodes on your product. Um, you need to have a product that is consistently at the standard that they're looking for and is at a good price point. Anyway, once you've built up this experience in the local market, then it's time to expand. So, okay, you saw our original place where we started. Then we moved from there into another house, another residential house actually, which we renovated to suit our needs. And actually, I'll pause there for a second before I jump to where we are right now in the present. And I will say that when we first started the business, we had all these really big ideas about building a factory and like it would all be solar powered and wind powered and super environmental and blah blah blah. And first of all, we didn't have the money for that. We didn't have the experience for that. Um, so yeah, it was just wasn't possible. But also, if you make too big a jump too quickly, if you fail, you have a very long way to fall down. Very long way to fall down. And so, what we have been advised and what we have experienced, and what I would advise is that you make much more gradual increases in growth. So, for us, again, from year one, we wanted to build our own factory. Didn't happen. We didn't have the money, we didn't have the experience, and it was a bad idea. So, we rented a space in another factory. Then we moved to a house that was a medium size that we could convert. Any issues we had, we could figure them out. We could learn what goes wrong. It requires less money to make that kind of smaller move. And then once you're there, once you've built up a couple of years experience, then it's easier to both just to access the money that you need for a bigger place, but also then to be able to manage the transition to the bigger place as well. So finally, after 2 to 3 years of fundraising, after 5 years of business, we finally were able to access the financing we needed to move to a bigger location. And just to give you an idea of how much it cost, I need to think about it. But basically, I'd say machinery, rent, hiring new people, all of this, we're looking at around $500,000. This is not all the money that we've raised. It's not all the money that it costs to run a business. I would say, in terms of what it costs to get the space, get the machines, get the trainings, get the certifications, that's about $500,000. And that is cheap. That is cheap. Um, Relatively. I don't have $500,000 in the bank. If I had $500,000 in the bank, I don't even know if I'd be on this call. No, that's a joke. I would be. But basically, it's just funny, like when you've been in business for a while, and we haven't even been in that long. It's funny, like what sounds big and what sounds small. Once upon a time, $100,000 sounded like I could retire and I could give up. And now I'm like, oh man, $100,000 can barely last like a few weeks. But yeah, anyway, it costs a lot of money to be able to make a big move. So you want to be ready, you want to have the experience, and also you need to be able to prove to people that you can manage that amount of money. Anyway, so we got this money. We found a warehouse. We've also similarly converted it. You can probably see in one of the videos that I linked to in the registration, but we built a movable um, paneled interior processing area that sits in this warehouse. And it's in that paneling that we have, as you can see on the right, this fancy conveyor belt. Um, and yeah, just where our processing happens. And I really like this photo on the right too, because it's like, wow, we're like a real legit factory and company, and that's really exciting. And it's just it always makes me feel like quite proud to share pictures like this because, it's a reminder of like why you do it when it really gets difficult. But I also wanted to make sure to show you the before pictures so that you don't just wake up and get to this end point. It really takes years. And it takes also time of like being embarrassed about what you're doing before you can get here. And it's okay. It's just a part of the journey. It's just a part of the journey. And then you can, when you reach the end of the journey, then you can make a nice presentation where you're like, oh my gosh, look at what we used to look like. Anyway, so export. So, we spent years building up the business. We spent years learning the product, learning our own product. We spent years starting to sell in the local market. And then we realized, okay, it's doing really well in the local market. That's really exciting. But we're not really making enough money in the local market. The reality is most of the people in our local market can't really afford this kind of product. So we need to be able to sell to a market that where people can afford it, export. We had export in mind from literally year one, day one, but it's taken us 4 to 5 years to actually be able to get there because export is not just export, right? You need to be able to export at a cost and at a price that makes sense where you're making enough money and the person at the other end feels that they can afford to buy what you're buying. And so there's lots of different people in between and lots of different costs in between. And you also have to be able to sell at a high enough volume for it to make sense. So again, I don't want to get too technical, but basically, when we first started producing, we could maybe do, I don't know, between 250 to 500 kilograms of dried fruit per month. Now, for any export buyer to really take you seriously, you need to be able to do minimum 10 tons of dried fruit per month. So we needed to increase our capacity by 20 to be able to start selling. So, as you can see, if you need to go from 500 to 10,000, then it's going to take a while. But, we did the whole journey that I just talked about. Here we are. And we also joined a program. We're actually in two programs. One is the German Import Promotion Desk. I have information about this that I can share later. And another one is called CBI, and it's through the Netherlands. But basically, these are programs that are run by host countries, European countries, who want more companies to export to them. So Germany wants to receive more exports from Ghana, from Ecuador, from Colombia, but they understand that the nature of these countries is that, maybe these companies don't have experience exporting, so they support you. They teach you everything from, how to talk to customers. They teach you they connect you to customers. They teach you kind of what certifications the customers are looking for and really just guide you. So you want to look for programs like that. And this is Emmanuel and I actually just from this year, we were in Paris at a food trade fair called Ciel, where there's like people from all over the world. And yeah, we were making connections there. Um, One thing to say is that I have actually been to this trade fair before. I've been to maybe 3 or 4 trade fairs, but it's actually only this trade fair where we really did business because it's only now that we have the capacity to be taken seriously. However, it was not a waste for me to go to the trade fairs before because I could talk to clients, because I could build up an understanding of what they were looking for. Okay. Whew. All right. I'm kind of on schedule, kind of. Okay, so I've talked a lot about like the growth of the business going from pretty much nothing to something. The other part of growing the business is growing the team. And I think that's something that even I myself underestimated before. I mean, I knew that, okay, we have to hire a lot of people, we have a lot of different roles we need to fit. Um, but there's so much to the growth of the team that it's really hard to underestimate, but you really need to try and be conscious of it and more than conscious of it, but open to learning about it, right? So when Emmanuel and I started, we were used to doing everything ourselves. You know, we did every single role. We did quality assurance, we did processing, like literally cutting the fruit and drying it, literally going to the farm and picking up the fruit. We did it, right? And then over the years, we have slowly had to not just give the jobs to other people, but also to learn how to give the jobs to other people. And that process is really hard itself too, because over time you gain so much knowledge and experience yourself, but being able to share that is not necessarily straightforward. And so that's been a process for us. And I can do a whole different presentation on leadership, but one of the important lessons for me about leadership has been learning how much I need to learn and being open to learning more about myself, being open to learning more about other people, and recognizing that leadership itself is a hard, necessary part of the work. I know even today, even these days, I sometimes get frustrated when I'm like trying to do something, like I'm trying to write a report or I'm trying to get us money or I'm trying to do my job, and then I need to pause and like talk to somebody about, how to manage their time, or I need to pause and teach somebody about how to like make a document or make a template. But I've really tried to take a deep breath and stop myself and say to myself, like, Yvette, that's also part of your job. Your job is everything. Your job is all of it. Your job is making money. Your job is strategy. Your job is also supporting your team. Your job is also doing what you can to make sure your team is equipped mentally, emotionally, with the resources they need to do their work. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. The other reason I put this up here, this picture up here, is because it's an opportunity for me to talk about the difficult part about growing and leadership. So, hiring, oh gosh, I don't even want to go into that. That's a whole story. But you have to hire people, it's part of the job, blah, blah, blah. The other part of the job is firing people. The other part of the job is understanding where there is not a good fit between the role and the person, or the person and the company, and being able to not only just, first of all, to recognize that there's not a good fit happening, and then secondly, being able to make the effort to try and see if something can be remedied. And then third of all, being ready, being confident enough to be able to say, this is actually not working for anyone. And we need to make a change here. We need to let someone go, or we need to make a transition or change somebody's position. I think it's really important that I emphasize that as part of the leadership journey because it's really hard and it's really emotional. And, I mean, I feel like it's easy to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. Like either you're like ruthlessly just get rid of people, you don't trust them, you don't whatever, or it's really, really hard to let people go. Both of those extremes are not necessarily helpful for the longevity of the business itself and for the rest of the team. And so I think like, I don't want to overemphasize the like relationship between leadership and running a business and being a parent, but I do think that there is some parallels you can make there in terms of having to sometimes be the bad guy for the sake of the health of the whole team for the business as well. So in this picture, there's some people who are no longer working with us. And I hope that, with the support of our HR and with other advice from people, letting people go was a relatively smooth transition. But yes, it's something that's very difficult, but very important. Okay, I'm like kind of at the end of my time, but I'm going to just quickly say two more things. Whew, okay. The other part of leadership that we try to really support is sort of peer leadership. So on the left is our quality assurance manager, Eunice. On the right is Alice, who's our packaging supervisor. And both of these people are heads of department, champions of their channels. And they are not only managing people, but they're also educating staff. They're also educating people. And, they can tell their own stories in their own time. But I think that they themselves have also seen the challenges of leading and managing people. It's really hard. And also, I said at the very beginning that we're this young, dynamic team. This is great, but the downside of being a young dynamic team is that most of us or most of the people in the team don't have work experience or even that much life experience from before, from outside the company. And so we're having to do a lot of learning together in the moment, and that can be tricky and challenging. But I think that, like, I hope that we have built enough rapport and trust with our team that, when we make a mistake, when they make a mistake, there's some grace for growing forward and together. Okay, and this is, I think I shared this to make a point about like supporting other people and um the future generations, which is important to us, blah blah blah. But yeah, this is us, this is the team, and I think my point was about like the future generations and what we're trying to do to support them, etc., etc. Okay, and now time for questions. I'm exhausted. Um, okay, please say more about hiring. Okay, sorry. Um, Right. We have about 15 minutes for questions. There were some questions that came in before the talk. So I've tried to weave in answers to them into the presentation, but I will also address some of them specifically now. If you have any specific questions, please can you put them into the chat right now, and I will do my best to answer them. If I whatever I can't answer now, either I will you know, do another session, or I will maybe do a blog post or something where I speak more about it. But yeah, so there's a question here about please say more about hiring. Okay. Okay. Well, the first thing I would say about hiring is that I hate hiring. Like, I'm just going to be really honest with you. I hate hiring because it is very difficult, actually. First of all, it's difficult to really understand what you need. And I would say at the beginning of our business journey, the biggest mistakes I made with hiring were my own fault in that I didn't really understand what I needed, the position I needed to hire for. The other difficult part is sometimes you do actually have a strong idea of what you need to hire for, but then you don't necessarily have the money that you need to really hire the person who has a lot of experience and hire the person um, that you think would be best. And so there is that trickiness there. But the most important thing is to the most important thing is to know what you need to hire for. Then there's the actual hiring process, which we try and make as open as possible. We share our what do you call it? We share the call for applications in as many different places as we can. And just one thing I'd add specifically is that we typically, or at least now we're trying to implement it, put the amount of money that we're going to pay on the call for application so people know. And for us, that's a part of our commitment to open communication and a part of our commitment to, yeah, just being honest and and having integrity and saying like we're not trying to dupe anyone or manipulate anyone. We have what we have and we want to enter into a situation fresh and honest and work like that. And, if someone wants to pay more than we're offering, they can. If someone wants to pay less than we're offering, they can. But we want to come immediately from a place of openness and honesty and disclosure. So that's part of our hiring process. One thing I would also say about hiring in recent times is the rise of the use of ChatGPT. And I have to say that it is really sad to me. Not like, people can have their different moral positions about ChatGPT and its use, but I would say from a hiring perspective, ChatGPT most of the time is a bad idea. Mostly because if everyone is using ChatGPT, everyone's answers are going to be the same. And if everyone's answers are the same, it is really impossible for me as someone hiring to know whether or why I should hire you. So a recent example, we were put out a call for applications for a sales lead. Actually, is that a good example? Anyway, I might be mixing examples, but let's say put in a sales application, an application for sales lead. Literally 75 responses, literally 70 of those responses have pretty much the exact same answer. And if that's the case, I don't know anything about 70 people and I immediately disqualify them. Not because they use ChatGPT, but because I don't know anything about them. So I don't know anything about them. It also tells me a little bit like maybe they do have skills, but they just use ChatGPT, or maybe they don't have skills and they use ChatGPT. Are they lying? How do I know? You don't know. So I think that there is a role for ChatGPT, and sometimes we'll use ChatGPT or I'll use ChatGPT to create a template. And then from that template, I will adjust it to do what we need. Recently, we had to figure out how many boxes can fit into a container for shipping. I definitely used ChatGPT for that because it was just easier. And then I also did my own calculations. So things like that, ChatGPT is helpful. But from whether you're hiring or you are applying, I just want you to be conscious of like the environment of like things like ChatGPT and how it makes it actually quite hard to hire really in the correct way, I would say. And then, okay, after hiring, we have normally a probation period, and then we keep people on or we keep people off. Okay, so that was about hiring. Um, what indicators? Sorry, give me 1 second. I just want to be fair about the questions. Um, how did you leverage? Mm, okay, sorry. There was one question there that I really wanted to say here. How do you maintain accountability? Oh, okay. There was a cash flow question. Oh my God. Okay, I really wanted to mention. So the question was, how do you handle cash flow management in the early years? And I'm going to combine that with another question, which was, how do you manage cash flow in an environment like Ghana? To be honest, I don't know that I've really figured it out. Like literally today, we are having cash flow issues. And some of it is in your control, some of it is not in your control. And I think it's really important for your sanity to give yourself the grace to understand what's not in your control. Let me start with what is in your control. Cash flow, let me break it down first. So, cash flow is about the money coming into the business and the money going out of the business. Money coming into the business can be from grants, from loans, from sales of your product. Money going out of your business is to pay salaries, for us to buy fruit, to pay for, taxes. Um, and yeah, basically, this is what's happening for the cash flow. It's flowing in, it's flowing out. What you can control is at least tracking those cash flows. That's where you want to start. What money is coming in? How is it coming in? How often is it coming in? Literally, some money comes in, write it down. It's the same for tracking your expenses. What am I spending money on? Where am I spending that money? How am I spending that money? How we track our expenses has shifted over time, but we are still using Google spreadsheets, by the way. We're not using fancy accounting software. We're still using Google spreadsheets for now. So what's in your control is to track what you're doing, track what money is coming in, and then build some learnings around it and try and project for the future. What's not in your control is inflation. What's not in your control is when people pay you. So this is a big one. So we have payment terms with some of our retailers, for example, 30 days. By the end of 30 days, they're supposed to pay us. It has happened before that 30 days came and went, 40 days came and went, 60 days came and went, and we hadn't been paid. When this happens, it really messes up all your plans and you have to be able to adjust. This is one of those things that you want to be able to negotiate well with the people that you are working with, and it's a mutual thing, right? If you don't give them product, they can't sell. If they don't pay you, you can't make new products. So most of the time, people do want it to work well, but if you don't have money, you can't pay. Then the other thing to be aware of that's not in your control is with financing, whether it's loans or grants. As I said, that process can be very slow. Even once you've signed all the paperwork, even once you've finished everything you need to do, they still might not disperse the money. They still might not credit the money to your account. And so you want to keep that in mind as well. And when that happens, again, it's not really your fault. You just have to learn how to, A, find money quick, which again, if you have a network, if you have people that you can turn to, that's best. So spend time building up your network and building up your safety nets. Um, and then also be ready to figure out how can I solve a problem without money. I think very often we're just like, we need to have more money. But another lesson that I learned from my work dads, Kwame and Peter, was that a lot of the times the more money, more problems. Basically, that's all you need to know. More money, more problems. And also your problems will scale with you. So it's not like, okay, you start at some level and then, once you have money and you have a fancy factory, you have no more problems. To this day, right now, we have a factory that is connected to the grid electricity and we are still paying every single day for generator fuel. Every single day we're paying for generator fuel. That is not something we necessarily budgeted for because why would we budget for generator fuel when we're connected to the electricity and it's supposed to work? So that's something that now we're having to pay this expense every single day. And it's not really our fault that we didn't budget for it. And so, it's kind of messed up our cash flow, but we have to see how we can find a solution to that over time. Okay, lots of questions. I'm going to answer Frida's questions real quick and then I might wrap it up. I'm really sorry. I know there's so much more to say. I could do like six of these. But Frida has just asked a question about separating business funds from your own personal funds. This is such an excellent question. And it's super important that as soon as possible, you do make this distinction between business funds and personal funds. Part of that can be part of that original making your entity into a legal entity. So when I was talking earlier about registering your business and building up that sort of data side, getting your certifications, part of that is opening a business account. Very important. In fact, people who are giving you loans or giving you grants, they are going to want to see that you have a business account. Once you have a business account, there is that natural separation, or you've created a separation between the personal and the business. If you are the owner and the accountant and the da 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 da, then of course that line can get blurred again. But it is so important that as much as possible you keep it separate. At the beginning, Emmanuel and I were able to like get funding from my mom and get funding from different programs, but we're also putting in our own money. This is often just necessary, even up till now. Sometimes I have to use my own money for the business, but I try and not do that because you need to be able to understand like, is this business able to function by itself? And also you might not get the money back. And also it's just difficult to track what's happening. And also there's the temptation, if you don't have money and the business has money, to use the business money for yourself. From the beginning, I've just said no. Like, I'm not an angel, I'm not perfect, but that's one thing that I do not do. I do not use business money for my own personal things because it is a slippery slope. And, I think all of us are very well-intentioned, good people, but once the chance is there, it's super, super hard to go back. I think circling all the way back, this is also why it's good to have a business partner because you have someone to whom you are directly accountable. So, if Emmanuel's like, that's weird, we had 1,000 cities and now we have 500 cities, where did that go? I have to be able to answer that question. So it's really good to have all these different ways of helping you maintain your integrity and also making sure that there is like a viable business to be had. But it is really difficult, and you will need to spend a lot of your own money. Final point on that one, if you don't put your own money, your own effort into the business, other people are not going to want to put the money in because the first question they're going to say is, why didn't you put money in? But once you have finished all your money putting it into the business, then you've proven yourself. So then, they're more likely to believe you. But yes, I just remembered somebody else's question that was so good, but I don't think that there'll be time to say it. Okay, maybe I'll do one more. Um, yeah, okay, I better wrap it up. Um, yeah. So sorry that I couldn't like give more space for people to talk. Like I said, I will Oh, okay. Yes, I'm going to answer this question. I will try and organize another one of these. At least Emmanuel will be doing a talk too at the beginning of next year. He'll be focusing more on the internal processes of the business, but also sourcing. He'll talk more about hiring and management as well, actually. Everything that I don't do. And we'll maybe try and do more after that as well. And just a quick one, somebody asked, can you come and visit us? Yes, we do like that. Normally, we try and be organized about visits. So probably at the beginning of the next year, we will release a registration for coming to visit. But if you are coming in a group, we can normally accommodate those a little bit more easily. So if you're coming as an individual, please wait for us to release a registration sheet for that. But if you have a group of 4 or 5 people, then you can just email us, can email me, and we can schedule a time for you to come visit as a group. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up, I guess. It feels so weird. I've been talking the whole time and only seeing my own face, but I just wanted to say thank you very much. And yeah, there'll be more in the future. Okay, and now I gotta figure out how to stop the recording. Okay.